David Kim stood at the edge of the helicopter, the humid Vietnamese air pressing against his skin like a heavy, wet blanket. His hands gripped his M16 rifle tightly, knuckles turning white beneath the dust and sweat. The dense green jungle below looked like a massive carpet of leaves hiding secrets and dangers in every shadow. The chopper's blades chopped through the thick air, creating waves of hot wind that made the nearby trees dance. David wasn't a rookie anymore, but this place felt different. This wasn't like the training grounds in California or the mock battlefields he had practiced on. This was real. This was Vietnam. As he jumped from the helicopter, his boots sank into the soft, muddy ground. The smell hit him first, a mix of wet earth, vegetation, and something else he couldn't quite describe. It was a smell of waiting, a smell of potential danger. "Move out!" Sergeant Rodriguez shouted, his voice cutting through the background noise of distant bird calls and insect sounds. David adjusted his helmet and checked his gear. Everything was in place. Ammunition secured, water canteen full, survival kit tight against his side. The squad moved in a tight formation, each soldier watching a different direction. They had been briefed multiple times about the Viet Cong tactics. These weren't traditional soldiers. They were ghosts who knew every inch of this jungle, who could disappear faster than you could blink. David remembered the training videos, how the Viet Cong would create complex tunnel systems, how they would blend into the landscape, how they could attack and vanish in moments. This wasn't going to be an easy mission. His mind drifted to his family back home. His mother, who had immigrated from Korea decades ago, had tears in her eyes when he was drafted. His father, a construction worker in Portland, had tried to look brave, but David could see the worry in his eyes. The jungle seemed to breathe around them. Every leaf movement caught David's attention. Was it wind? Was it an enemy soldier? In this environment, everything was a potential threat. "Kim, you're on point," Rodriguez said, tapping his shoulder. Being on point meant being the first in the formation, the one who would likely encounter any potential ambush or trap. David nodded, understanding the responsibility. His training kicked in. Each step calculated, each movement precise. Watch the ground for tripwires. Look for disturbed earth that might indicate hidden tunnels or mines. Listen for unnatural sounds. The jungle was alive, but not all life was friendly. Hours passed. The heat was suffocating. Sweat ran down David's back, soaking his camouflage uniform. His boots, which had felt comfortable during training, now felt like lead weights. Each step was a challenge. Suddenly, a strange rustle in the nearby bushes. David stopped. His team froze behind him. Years of training compressed into milliseconds of reaction time. Hand signals replaced words. Rodriguez's hand moved slightly, signaling everyone to take cover. The jungle, which moments ago seemed peaceful, now felt like a living, breathing enemy. Every shadow could be hiding a Viet Cong soldier. Every tree could be concealing a potential ambush point. David's heart raced. His finger hovered near the trigger of his M16. This was real. This wasn't a simulation. This was war. The first day in the jungle would set the tone for everything that was to come. David Kim didn't know it yet, but these moments were shaping him into a soldier, into a survivor. The jungle would become his classroom, his challenge, and potentially his grave. As the afternoon light filtered through the dense canopy, creating a green-tinted world of shadows and light, David Kim understood one thing clearly. Survival here would depend on more than just military training. It would require instinct, adaptability, and a bit of luck. The mission had just begun, and the jungle was watching, waiting, ready to test every skill, every nerve, and every ounce of courage David possessed. The jungle had been quiet for hours, but quiet was never good. Quiet meant something was waiting. David Kim knew this now. His senses were sharp, every muscle tense, scanning the endless green around him. Rodriguez had positioned the squad near a small clearing, an area that looked peaceful but felt wrong. David could feel it in his bones. Something was about to happen. The air felt thick, heavy with tension. A twig snapped somewhere to the left. Not the sound of wind or an animal. This was deliberate, human. David's grip on his M16 tightened. His eyes scanned the thick vegetation, looking for any slight movement. Then it happened. Fast, brutal, unexpected. The first shots rang out like sharp crackers, cutting through the jungle's peaceful sounds. Bullets flew from multiple directions, seemingly coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The Viet Cong had perfected the art of invisible warfare. "Incoming!" Rodriguez screamed. But the warning was almost unnecessary. Every soldier was already moving, diving for cover, returning fire into the dense greenery. David saw his first comrade fall. Private Williams, a young kid from Texas who had joked about getting home in time for his sister's wedding, dropped without even a sound. Blood spread quickly on his camouflage uniform, a stark red against the green landscape. Training took over. David didn't have time to mourn. He found a large fallen tree trunk and used it as a barrier. His movements were quick, precise. Aim, shoot, move, reload, repeat. The Viet Cong fighters knew the terrain better than anyone. They would shoot and immediately change positions, making themselves nearly impossible targets. They weren't fighting, a traditional war. They were hunting. Sweat mixed with dirt on David's face. His breathing was controlled, but his heart raced. This wasn't like the training videos. This was real. People were dying around him. Another squad member, Garcia, got hit in the shoulder. He was screaming, a sound that seemed to echo through the jungle. David knew they needed to get him medical help, but moving meant exposing themselves to more gunfire. Rodriguez was shouting commands, trying to organize a coordinated response. But the enemy was too smart, too prepared. They would attack from one direction and then quickly shift, keeping the American soldiers constantly off balance. David saw a movement, a flash of clothing between two trees. He took aim and fired. A distant scream told him he might have hit something, but there was no time to confirm. In this jungle, celebrating a hit could mean instant death. The firefight continued. Minutes felt like hours. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the earthy jungle scent. Bullets were cutting through leaves, creating a strange dance of destruction around them. 3 more of David's squad members were wounded. Their medical supplies were running low. They needed an extraction, but the dense jungle made helicopter rescue nearly impossible. Rodriguez made a quick decision. "Suppressing fire," he yelled. This meant some soldiers would continuously shoot to keep the enemy down while others would try to help the wounded and create an escape route. David was selected for suppressing fire. His job was to keep shooting, to make the Viet Cong soldiers keep their heads down. Every bullet counted. Every movement was calculated. The jungle, which had been their silent companion, was now a violent battlefield. Trees splintered. Leaves fell like rain. The ground was becoming muddy with blood and spent ammunition. As suddenly as it started, the attack began to fade. The Viet Cong fighters melted back into the jungle, as if they were never there. No dramatic retreat. No final stand, just silence. When it was over, David looked around. The cost was high. Williams was dead. Garcia and 2 others were seriously wounded, and they had no idea how many of the enemy they had actually hit. Rodriguez approached David, placing a hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. They had survived. But survival in this war meant more than just staying alive. It meant understanding that every moment could be your last. As a helicopter finally arrived to extract the wounded, David Kim realized something fundamental about this war. It wasn't about territory or victory. It was about survival. Pure and simple. The first blood had been shed, and David knew this was just the beginning. The base camp was different after the first major encounter. David Kim watched as soldiers moved with a new kind of caution, a learned awareness that couldn't be taught in training. The previous firefight had changed everything. Old veterans started sharing survival tips. Not the official military handbook stuff, but real jungle wisdom. How to move without making sound. How to read the forest's hidden language. How to survive when everything wanted you dead. A sergeant named Martinez, who had been in Vietnam for 2 tours, took David under his wing. "The jungle is alive," he would say. "It breathes, it watches, and it can kill you faster than any bullet." Martinez taught David how to walk. Not march, but truly walk in the jungle. Each step carefully placed, watching for tripwires, checking for disturbed earth, learning to move like the Viet Cong, silent, invisible. Water became more precious than ammunition. David learned to collect morning dew from large leaves. He discovered how to purify water using basic chemicals and understand which streams might be safe. One wrong drink could mean death from disease or poisoning. Camouflage was no longer just a uniform. It became an art. David learned to cover himself with mud, to break up his body's outline using leaves and branches. He discovered how to remain still for hours, becoming part of the landscape. Night patrols became his new reality. The jungle, transformed after sunset. Sounds changed, creatures moved differently. David trained his ears to distinguish between natural sounds and human movement. A broken twig, a slight rustle. These could mean survival or death. Food was another challenge. Military rations were limited. Martinez showed David how to identify safe plants, how to set simple traps for small animals. Survival wasn't about comfort. It was about staying alive. Communication changed too. Hand signals replaced loud voices. A simple hand movement could mean danger, move, or stay still. The Viet Cong had mastered this language, and now David was learning it too. His squad became closer, not through friendship, but through survival. They watched each other's backs, checked each other's gear, shared limited resources. The bond wasn't about liking each other. It was about keeping each other alive. Rodriguez started teaching advanced reconnaissance techniques, how to read the ground, how to spot recent movement, how to understand the subtle signs that the Viet Cong left behind. Footprints, broken branches, tiny signs that most would miss. David's body changed. His muscles became lean and hard. His senses sharpened. He could smell rain before it came, hear movements others couldn't detect. The jungle was transforming him, just as he was learning to move through it. Equipment became secondary. David learned to use what was around him. A machete was more important than a fancy rifle. A simple local map could be more valuable than advanced military intelligence. Survival was about adaptation. Medical knowledge became crucial. David learned basic first aid, but more importantly, how to prevent injuries, how to treat jungle rot, how to stop infections before they started, how to survive when medical help was days away. The psychological battle was the hardest. Fear was a constant companion. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every sound could mean an ambush. David learned to control his fear, to use it as a tool for survival rather than a weakness. Martinez would often say, "In this jungle, your mind is your best weapon." David was starting to understand. Physical strength meant nothing if your mind couldn't handle the constant tension, the constant threat. Nightmares became common. Soldiers would wake up covered in sweat, remembering fallen comrades, remembering close calls. But survival meant pushing through, staying alert, staying alive. As weeks passed, David transformed. He was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming something else, a survivor. Someone who understood that in this war, every day was a battle, against more than just the enemy. The jungle was teaching him its most important lesson. Adaptation wasn't just about survival. It was about becoming something more than you were before. The mission looked simple on paper. Clear a section of jungle. Secure a small strategic hill, but David Kim knew by now that nothing was ever simple in Vietnam. Their squad moved carefully, each soldier more machine than human. Months of jungle survival had transformed them. Every step calculated, every breath controlled. The forest around them waited, silent and dangerous. Rodriguez suddenly raised his hand. "Stop." Everyone froze. Years of training compressed into a single moment of absolute stillness. Something wasn't right. The attack came from everywhere and nowhere. Bullets ripped through the jungle like angry hornets. The Viet Cong had prepared a perfect ambush. Hidden tunnels, camouflaged positions, multiple attack points. David watched Garcia get hit first. A clean shot through the shoulder. Then Williams took a bullet to the leg. The squad's formation collapsed. Quickly, survival became individual, not collective. "Retreat!" Rodriguez screamed. But retreat in this jungle meant certain death. The Viet Cong would hunt them down like animals. Their only chance was to fight. David found cover behind a massive fallen tree. His hands moved automatically. Check weapon, reload, scan area, breathe. The training had become muscle memory. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered. The enemy knew every inch of this terrain. David could hear them moving through hidden tunnels, changing positions, hunting. One by one, his squad members fell, not just wounded, killed. Young men who had dreams of returning home, now becoming just another statistic in a war nobody truly understood. Martinez, the veteran who had taught David survival skills, took a shot to the chest. David watched him fall, knowing medical evacuation was impossible. The jungle would be his final resting place. Something changed inside David. Fear transformed into something else. A cold, calculated rage. He wasn't fighting for country anymore, he was fighting to survive, to get his remaining team members out alive. He started moving differently, using skills Martinez had taught him, reading the jungle, understanding its language. The Viet Cong might know the terrain, but David was becoming one with it. Strategic shots, movement between cover, understanding the enemy's tactics. David became a predator, no longer just a soldier, but a survivor. Hours passed. The battle continued, ammunition running low, hope becoming a distant memory, each soldier fighting not for victory, but for the simple chance to see another sunrise. Rodriguez was wounded. His leadership faltered. David found himself making decisions, choosing routes, coordinating defense. The young soldier was becoming something more. The heat was suffocating, sweat mixed with blood and dirt. The jungle seemed to close in, turning from a battlefield into a living, breathing enemy. A moment of silence. Too quiet. David knew what was coming. A final massive assault designed to overwhelm their position. He prepared, checked his remaining ammunition, looked at his wounded teammates, made a decision that would define everything. When the attack came, David was ready. Not with fear, not with traditional military training, but with a survivor's instinct. Every movement precise, every shot calculated. The battle became a blur of sound and motion, bullets, screams, the jungle's indifferent background noise. David moved like liquid, changing positions, protecting his team. As sunset approached, something changed. The attack stopped. The Viet Cong melted back into the forest. Just like that. No dramatic finale. No clear victory. David looked around. Half his squad was gone. The survivors were broken physically and mentally. But they were alive. And in this war, alive was the only victory that mattered. Rodriguez, barely conscious, looked at David. No, words were needed. Something had changed. The boy who arrived months ago was gone. A survivor had taken his place. The jungle kept its secrets. The war continued, and David Kim had crossed a line from which there was no return. The plane touched down in Portland, bringing David Kim back to a world that felt completely foreign. His uniform was clean now, but his eyes told a different story. A story the civilians around him could never understand. His mother waited at the airport, tears mixing with a smile of relief. But David wasn't the same son she had said goodbye to years ago. The war had changed him in ways no one could see. The first weeks were the hardest. Normal sounds became potential threats. A car backfiring could send him diving for cover. Nightmares came every night, replaying jungle battles that seemed more real than this peaceful American suburb. People wanted to hear heroic stories. They asked about battles, about victory. David remained silent. How could he explain a war where survival was the only true victory? How could he describe a conflict where lines between right and wrong blurred like mist in the jungle? His father tried to help. A working-class man who understood struggle, he would sit with David on the porch. No words needed, just quiet understanding. Sometimes David would wake up in a cold sweat, and his father would simply bring him a cup of coffee. Jobs became difficult. The discipline remained, but the connection with civilian life was gone. Construction work felt too restricting. Office jobs felt like a cage. The freedom of the jungle, as dangerous as it was, had changed him forever. Veteran support groups helped a little. Other soldiers who had returned understood the silent language of survival. They didn't need to explain. A look was enough. A shared experience that civilians could never comprehend. Memories haunted him. Martinez's final lessons, Rodriguez's leadership, the teammates who never made it home. Each face remained vivid, each moment frozen in time. David started writing. Not for publication, not for anyone else to read, just to process the memories. Pages filled with raw, unfiltered experiences, a way to release the pressure building inside him. Nightmares became less frequent, but never disappeared. The jungle lived inside him now. Every rustling leaf, every unexpected sound. A part of Vietnam remained permanently embedded in his soul. He discovered photography. Capturing moments became a way of controlling memories. Each picture a way of freezing time, of making sense of the chaos he had experienced. The camera became his new weapon, recording life instead of destroying it. Relationships were complicated. How do you explain love to someone who hasn't stared death in the face? How do you connect when your experiences are so fundamentally different? Some veterans turned to alcohol, some to drugs. David chose a different path: movement, understanding, healing. He began teaching survival skills. Not military training, but real survival. Helping other veterans understand that surviving wasn't just about staying alive. It was about finding meaning after experiencing the impossible. Years passed. The war became a distant memory for most Americans. But for David, it was always present, a constant companion, a reminder of humanity's complexity. On quiet nights, he would look at old photographs, not of battles but of moments. A smile shared between soldiers, a moment of unexpected peace in the middle of chaos. Those were the real memories worth keeping. He never considered himself a hero. Heroes were people who had choices. He was simply a survivor, someone who had learned that life was more complicated than good and bad, right and wrong. The jungle had taught him everything about humanity, about survival, about the thin line between civilization and pure instinct. As he grew older, David understood something profound. The war wasn't just about Vietnam. It was about understanding human nature, about discovering what people are capable of when pushed to their absolute limits. His scars, both physical and mental, became a map of survival. Each mark, a story. Each memory, a lesson. Portland continued to change. Seasons came and went. But David remained a quiet observer, a man who had seen the world's darkness and found a way to appreciate its light. The war had ended decades ago. But for David Kim, some battles never truly finish. They simply transform, becoming part of who you are.